Hey guys, Collin Moshman here, playing a PokerStars WSOP $82 buy-in Step 3. I was playing a few of these with Ben Maxim the other day, and we were talking about strategy differences based on the step level, and these are so popular now, everybody's playing these, so you get a lot of weak competition. It's a pretty good investment, and I thought, why not just make a video and go over some of the most important points we talked about so that you guys who are playing these can absolutely maximize your return. Now, the first thing is just a couple of general comments on these. Now, you can buy into them with W dollars. So, just to recap, PokerStars has these two types of special currency, the T dollars and the W dollars. The T's you can buy in to any tournament at all, and you can, if you want to buy them, like, you hardly get any discount at all. Maybe you get like a 0.1% discount. But the W dollars, right now, you probably get around a 2% discount, and farther away from the WSOP, you get a much bigger discount. So that's one reason to get them. You know, if you save like $20 buying 1,000 of them, hey, go on and buy lunch on the W dollar ferry. But another reason is just to have a kind of a separate budget for qualifiers. And that's something that's not going to help you mathematically, but a lot of times you don't necessarily want to keep your normal winnings with a satellite budget. So maybe you have a few $100 or whatever that you want to see if you can parlay into a seat. So you get these W dollars, and then you don't have to worry about it at all. Okay, either you manage to turn it into a seat, and that's great. But if not, you're not going to go over your budget for how much you want to spend on satellites. And when you do win one of these, which really surprised me, and I guess is some sort of legal bullshit or whatever, but you get the cash rather than the, actual buy-in. So, I mean, that's a good thing, right? The cash is worth more. The only problem with that, of course, is that if spending 10K on one tournament isn't a smart investment financially, if they just bought you in, then you could say, well, I didn't have a choice. But now you do have a choice. But, it gives you a little more flexibility in case you do win one of them. And in terms of return, so at present, I have a $1,700 W investment that I've turned into 5 step 5s and 4 step 4s. So I think if you're pretty good going up to the step 5s and step 6s, you can generally increase your equity in these things by around 50%. So maybe if you have around a $500 investment, you'll end up with like $750 in tickets. And that's kind of a number that I'm just sort of pulling out of my ass, but there's soft competition, so you can certainly get a higher than average return. But it's obviously takes a lot of luck to go all the way. And I think I've definitely been lucky increasing my investment by well over 100% going into this, at this point. And really, it all comes down to the extremely high variance step 6s. 1 in 9 advances and the rest pretty much get peanuts. So you either have, going into that, a really good return, or at the step 6, you lose, right? Because everybody besides the winner at step 6 loses. So that's just sort of some preliminary ideas on these, and without doubt, I mean, they're obviously a high variance thing to do, and the main reason is if you're okay with that, or you really like the idea of playing on the WSOP, and you're compensated for this higher variance, again, by facing weaker competition, and a lot of guys will sort of get lucky in the lower steps and build their way up. No, you notice that I've been folding a huge number of hands so far. So what's new, right? I always play these sin and goes pretty tight. You guys are used to that. But this one I'm playing even tighter, and here's the reason. With step 3, top 2 advance, and 3rd, 4th, and 5th Alright, check out third, fourth, and fifth all repeat. So if you make it into the top 5, you're guaranteed to at least break even. Very few guys realize this, and as a result, you're risking a lot more equity than in a normal sit and go when you're risking chips early, and you should tend to be very tight when there are 6 guys and more left. And that's because, again, in particularly the looser of these games, you could theoretically even fold your way into the top 5 to a large extent. You don't want to do that, but you want to take advantage of only very solid values. And usually, over 50 hands or whatever, you'll find a couple of playable hands to boost your stack. And you take advantage of these solid values, hopefully boosting your stack a little. And the result is that a lot of the time, you at least repeat. And the times you bust out are at least compensated by those times when you pick up some really good hands early and you manage to get a pretty big stack going into the top 5 with only 2 trying to advance. Okay, in this particular hand, if Gutshot had doubled and this guy raised to 685, I would have gone ahead and reshoved all in because I think that I'm probably ahead on average of kind of a random hand and then a hand that's like any pocket pair, any decent ace, King 10 suited, King Jack. But when Lattice Shock, even though he's sort of loose, comes over top all in, facing a Razor and a Re-Razor, I'm going to give him credit for a hand. And I think at best I'll probably be flipping, against a pair of 10s or something. But if he had not entered, I would have gone ahead and stuck in all my chips there with that ace queen. So let's see what these guys have. So Steeler Bill, I think, had a better hand than he needed to. I think he would have done that with with a lot less aces, like probably even ace 8 or something. And Lattice Shock, okay, pocket 9, some, not a monster, but a decent hand. And in fact, we would have been racing. So, good thing we folded. And another reason there is, again, because we really are not looking to gamble a lot. Now this call is a little marginal, so I'm getting like, what am I getting, 7 to 1 or something. But in the suited queen, offsuit I definitely fold, but even so, I don't know how much I like this. Certainly any weaker now would fold. But here's the thing, okay? This strategy differs depending on which step you are. So if you advance from, say, the step 3 to a step 4, then you need to play not as tight early. I mean, you should still play a good, solid, tight game. But now only the top 3 really win something, okay? 4 and beyond may win some token prizes of repeating lower steps. But third repeats the step 4, and top 2 advance. So that's more like a normal sit and go. And your chips, doubling early or whatever has greater value. And you should go ahead and play it like a normal sit and go. So you guys might be thinking this is a little abstract. And how would you actually modify your game based on it? Well, I guess the example that I've given a few times, and then I sort of let's say that you're in late position with ace-king. Now let's say right in this hand, okay, we have blinds of 75, 150, and we're in the hijack. Let's say we had ace-king with a stack of 1900. If this were a normal sit and go, or step 4, where only the top 3 really get something, then I would go ahead and make a raise to 400 chips, and if somebody re-raised all in, I would call. Right? Pretty straightforward. Usually you don't want to overshove for a lot of big blinds, and shoving there would be okay, but I would go ahead and take the normal route of making a standard raise, and if somebody restole, I'd call. In a step 3, okay, right now we've got 7 guys left with a stack of 1900 and ace-king here, I would go ahead and just shove, because I don't want to gamble. With 7 guys left, I'm happy to just pick up the blinds. I'm a lot less inclined to gamble, and I want to go ahead, seize a definite edge, and force somebody to gamble with the worst hand or just give me the blinds when there's still opponents left. Just to reiterate, that was assuming a stack of 1800, 2100. With S1145, I'd obviously just shove. It's too shared stacked. But with 6 to 9 guys left, you're just looking to play for value take sure deals, and not really add a lot to your chip swings. Again, because top 5 gets something. So here, for instance, obviously we're going to play this. This is a blatant play, but we wouldn't be sort of randomly sticking in all of our chips, even with this guy coming all in over top, because the button could be raising. He's got a huge range. Okay, he's entering around 40% of hands, nearly a third with a raise, and he's on the button. So I'm thinking that his raising range is like the top third of hands, and Boko may know that. And even if not, he could be doing this with most pocket pairs, with easily with 6s, 7s, 8s, ace 10, ace 9. So this is one that we've got to play, and I think we're going to be pretty ahead of his range. What does he have? Ace queen. Okay, well, so we ended up flipping, but there's some dead money and lattice shooks min raise to subsidize the gamble. And I certainly think he could have done this with weaker hands. Like ace 10 suited, I'm pretty sure he would have just gone ahead and re-raised all in. So even though so far this game, how many hands have I played? Like 2 hands or something. But hey, it's sticking to solid values. I managed to increase my stack a little, and that's not so bad. So again, the main key to increasing your equity in these steps, where the top 4 or 5 guys get a decent prize, and when I say decent, I mean at least you're buying back, is to say, hey, I'm not going to be one of those fools who subsidize all these winners, and just be tight early, maximize your chances of getting something while sticking to solid values that can still increase your stack. And then once this mini bubble bursts, in this case it would be with 5 guys or fewer, stick to a more standard, aggressive high blind strategy. Oops, we're back a hand here. Now, one thing is, even though I use the term bubble, saying 6 guys is nearly a bubble, it's a bubble in that there's a big difference in prize pool distribution, between the guys who get 6th and worse and 5th and better. But it's not a bubble in terms of guys really tightening. Very few guys tighten a lot when there's 6 guys left and top 5 get something. And I say that based on observation, so having played a lot of these. So you don't want to make, all these any 2 shoves, particularly against really loose passive guys. Then you find frequent these a lot more often than comparable sit and go cash buy-ins. Like a $50 or $100 buy-in cash relative to an $82 buy-in step 3. So to cite an example, right? Look at this lattice shot guy. Now, should I have shoved this? Let's take a look here. We're dealing with effective stacks of around 7 blinds on the button with 9-10 suited. With 6 guys left, I definitely wouldn't take the risk. Here, this is pretty close. And it's a little tougher to use programs like Wizard because the equity isn't given out quite like a normal sit and go. Top 2 get the identical prize, and 3 get something, but the same as 4th and 5th, namely redo. So, just off the top of my head here, I think this is a pretty marginal one, and shoving wouldn't be so bad, but I don't really have a problem with folding either. Anyway, with 10 blinds, like let's say you were shoving into lattice shock and you're in gut shots position, you would need a decent hand to shove, because this guy's going to call pretty wide. He's got a big stack, and he's entering like half the pots. So he could look you up very wide. Guys like this in my experience. And I know that you guys who play more low-stakes games are probably even more familiar with this type of opponent. But he can certainly call you with a hand like as weak as Queen 5 suited, any ace, any pocket pair. You're even kind of randomly with suited connectors like 7-8 suited. So if you're shoving into him from the small blind with like 10 blinds, certainly the unexploitable ones like ace deuce, pocket pair, but a hand like, say, king 2 suited, that would be a lot more marginal. And that one you may not want to do. So that's why I think these stats are really important here. and it doesn't matter which program you're using, but definitely have up, VPIP, PFR, and for these real loose guys, particularly when they have a bigger stack, know that they're going to call you a lot wider and shove narrower. Another way you can exploit that is by value shoving. So, okay, now why am I raising it? Let's take a look at this. So, the blinds are 153, or are they? Because we have an ante 2, so we have a starting pot of just under 300 plus 150 is 450, plus 125, that's 575. So, with blinds of 200, 400, you have a starting pot of 600. Now we have a pot of 575, so my feeling here is that the blinds are pretty close to being an ante-list 200, 400, in which case I have around 4.5 blinds, and I don't know if 8 queen in a normal sitting go is necessarily a plus DV shove. It's close if it's not, but considering that I'm going to be blinded out, or really close to it, once the blinds pass me anyway, I'm willing to make a more marginal shove. And that's particularly the case since there are 5 guys left, and now is when you want to start accumulating. You don't want to make wild plays, but you don't want to get blinded out either, and since I'm at least going to be repeating here, I don't think this is such a bad shove. In fact, I would do this one again. So that works out. And one big thing I found with these games, like I was saying, is use the stats to figure out when you can go over guys for value. A lot of these guys are limping all the time, and you can see how often they're limping, and then if you're ahead of their range. So we haven't looked at an example of that so far in this game, and this is just one of the sub 3s that I've played kind of randomly. Jeff and I have changed our bet, the one where the loser has to take us and or waves, girlfriends, whatever, out to a nice dinner with alcohol. And when Jeff and I say a nice dinner with alcohol, we're not talking like $100, $200. We're talking like you may as well take this money and buy in directly to the WSOP. Well, obviously that's an exaggeration, but we're going to be living this up. So, we definitely we want to motivate each other. So we're starting with the step 3s, and I think it's real important when you look at these to make sure that you know when you can get good value from these limpers. And against guys who may be limping a lot, let's just take a look at Stove. Let's say you've got a guy who's again here we haven't seen some great examples of that, but I've seen a lot of guys, for instance, who are something like 35-5. Okay, so they're entering 35% of hands, 5% with the raise. And if I see one of those guys limping, say in mid-position, and I'm trying to decide if I can go over top of him, one thing you can do is you can have Pokersavvy up. Now, Pokersavvy, of course, is freeware, and you can easily have it up while you're playing these. And I'd say, okay, these stats are a good thing to look at. And let's say that he's entering 35% of hands. So I'll click OK there. And so in this last one here, I said I had King Queen. I don't know what calculation I was doing. Well, let's say King Queen again. Can you go over top with King Queen? Well, you're ahead of his range, and these guys don't fold super often. So, but even if he's not folding at all, and you're ahead of his range, and there's some dead money from the blinds, pseudo dead money, as I call it, then this isn't so bad. So this type of situation, okay, we've got a middle position limper who's entering 35% of hands, with at least a limp, and you've got King Queen, say in the small blind. If there are 5 guys or fewer, go ahead and repop him. Maybe he's limping and you guys are like 10 blinds deep, and just go ahead and shove that. But with like 7 guys left, maybe you can find a better spot. And just think about, if you're taking these guys literally, which is usually a good approximation, then when can you get value? And we'll look, maybe there'll be another hand in this game when I can hopefully be a little clearer. But if not, if you guys want to post some hands about coming over top of guys and extracting value based on, literal plays and coming over top of limpers, go ahead and post those in the forums, and I'll be happy to me and anyone else can take a look, see what we think. Here we'd call very wide, getting better than 2-1 with ace queen suited. Obviously, we're going to call pretty happily. What does he have? 9 jack. Oh! Bastard! Okay, so. Yeah. Now we've got to be. Again, we've got nothing to lose, so we're going to be looking to shove. And with over 3 blinds, at least ignoring the antes, there's a chance we can get people to fold. So pretty much with any hand besides total trash, we're going to shove this. Even total trash, you want to be a bad shove. But if it's not total trash, it'll be an easy shove. And again, some of the times when we'll make these non-all-in raises, and I've noticed these a lot more in the cash games, the cash sitting goes non-steps, guys making this play, and it's not so bad because it looks like, it could be for value. And whether or not it works, I don't know, but it's not so bad. Just basically like 3 or 4 blinds and making yourself obviously all in when maybe you could fold. But Vino correctly did not buy it, and nonetheless we have a minor suck out on him, and now we're in much better shape again. So here again, okay, if we look at this as being close to 200, 400 blinds, that's like we have, maybe 5.5 blinds deep. So the king queen is a definite shove. Even more so than it'd be with like 7.5 blinds, which would be kind of marginal. But with antes, it's very clear shove. And I mentioned earlier that guys won't treat the period right before somebody repeats as a bubble. So in other words, for the step 3, they won't treat 6 guys left as a bubble. For the step 4, they won't treat 4 guys left as a bubble so much. But when only 2 guys advance and there are 3 guys left, those can go on more often, even at the lower steps. So those you're going to usually find guys tightening up a good deal. And that's more like steal, re-steal territory. There's kind of a selection effect there, because guys who don't even get the concept that with, say, 3 left, 2 advance, you can't call a lot. You've got to either raise or fold unless you've got a really strong hand. In that case, those guys, it's really hard for them to advance, even if they luck box up maybe the first step or 2, because that's just such a fundamental principle for playing satellites. And again, with these satellites, one point that I've talked about a lot, and I know Mad Matris has talked about a lot in his videos, is one sec, guys. So here, one of the reasons that I'm making this shove with 7 blinds, I'll make this a lot in my normal games, but not always here in like a low step. But this guy with 16, 12, he's not super loose or anything. So if he were like 40, 25, I may not try to bluff shove on him with any 2 cards. But since we're getting shorter stacked, and he's also relatively tight, that makes this pretty much an 8-2 card shove. But for satellites, so chips decline in value, and what that means here is, let's say that okay, ladder shock. This is another clear shove. I would shove any ace here. And when we get called by pocket 3s, so nice. Okay, if ladder shock increases his stack by much, those chips aren't going to help him. Okay, if you're one of the last 2 guys in there, it doesn't matter if you have 1 chip or if you have 5,000 chips. In fact, the guy with 1 chip, his 1 chip is worth a huge amount. Okay, you've got, in this particular case, the winner advances to a $215 buy-in game. So if you manage to advance with 1 chip, that chip would be worth megabucks. That single chip would be worth over $200. But now, if instead of 1 chip, you've got 2,000 chips, then each chip is worth a dime. 2150 chips. Each chip will be worth a dime. So there's no point in just accumulating chip after chip. So if you end up with a huge lead, don't take it for granted. Don't think I'm just gonna, re-steal and go over top of everybody. But know that accruing more chips really isn't gonna do you a lot of good. So stick to a lot of value. Don't get carried away. And really, at this point, it's just a pretty easy thing to do to survive. And remember that, okay? Winning a ton of chips, it's not like a normal sit and go where you always want to survive. Okay, if you get bumped up from say 3 guys left to 2 guys left, then that's a big win. But increasing chips always benefits you because the winner, the absolute winner, always gets even more. Okay, so you go from 3 to 2, you win some equity, but 2 to 1, you win even more equity. That doesn't happen here. Okay, it doesn't matter if you end up in the last 2 spots with, again, 5,000 chips or 1 chip. Either way, you're advancing. So keep in mind that at this point, it's only about survival. Okay, it doesn't mean to be passive and stuff. Survival can mean accruing chips and you've got good value, or you need to make a move to stay alive. But there's no point in just bullying the table because you think guys are going to fold a lot when you pretty much have a good shot of getting in without a lot of chip swings. A lot of guys blow leads by not recognizing that it's about survival at this point. What do I fold here? So based on the fact that it's saying 53 out of 79 hands, I'm thinking Vito does not eliminate this hand, but makes him sort of make a comeback. And with ace-3, okay, so in this particular hand, this is really a pot odds thing. I'm getting close to 2 to 1, and I've got an ace. So that's, I wouldn't call super light because I'd rather this guy risk his chips. I don't want to be the one risking chips. But getting close to 2 to 1 with a chance to knock this guy out, I'm going to make that call. And we split the blinds and antes, so that's fine. Clear shove with 5s. Okay, 7s. So the reason why I min-raise is that there's no point, 7s is obviously strong enough to play, but I'm obviously going to fold if ladder shack re-steals. Okay, there's no way that with this guy having 1,200 chips, I'm going to be calling, to race against Queen Jack, whatever dumb hand this guy wants to risk his chips with. So clearly, if I make this raise, I can call Vino's re-raise, and there's no point in risking more chips. I'm just doing this to put Vino all in. And apparently that's not going to work. 9 Jack. Alright. And after a couple of double ups, it's back even. And this Queen 10, this isn't a spot where I really like the re-steal all in, maybe in a normal sit and go, but this isn't a spot where I want to risk a lot of chips. So getting over 3 to 1, it's kind of it's not necessarily the strongest play, but it's not so bad either. If I flop top pair there, I'll be willing to play for an all-in. So ace-8 I would shove up to around about 10 blinds even. So if that's 7 blinds or whatever, that's a pretty clear shove. And this one I fold. This one could be shoved. I think it's a little iffy, but I'm not quite as inclined. And now at this point, you say 21-15 to junk shove. But you could shove that. That wouldn't be so bad shoving any 2. Getting 3-2, I'm definitely not going to call with a weak queen. Even for fractions of your stack. So 8-9, now I'm even shorter and I have a stronger hand, so I'll shove that. You don't want to gamble for even fractions of your stack. You benefit a lot more when other guys gamble. So the guys who really do the best in these in terms of, overall return on their step investment are those who understand the principle very well and want other guys to gamble. If they get a big chip lead, they're not going to feel compelled to play every hand and bully the table, even though that can be a lot of fun. Okay, this is kind of a crucial hand because we have, we know this guy's going to be raising pretty wide based on his stats and his betting patterns. We have an above average hand, and probably I guess at least half the time he's going to have at least one card 6 or below. And at the same time, we'd much rather that Vino be the one gambling. So the question is, do we fold and kind of hope that we get a strong hand or he gets blinded out first? Or do we shove? Well, the first thing I want to do, because this is the type of thing that it's going to be a lot harder to do with ICM software since the payouts are a lot different. Let's give him a range and let's see how sixes compare against it. Because what am I actually going to do in this one? What I actually do is I re-steal all in. And I don't know, I mean, that's certainly not a bad play, but let's see what we think about here. So, I've got pocket sixes, and what does this dude have? Well, so he's raising, it says 25.8, but now it's shorter handed, and, he's also on the button. He's been raising a lot. I think it's actually going to be a little higher. You don't want to be too optimistic in these, but I think top 30 would be about my guess. So, hey, it's my video. I get to plug in the numbers, right? Alright. So, top 30 versus 6-6. Place your bets. 50-50. Okay. Fair enough. And of course, it's being subsidized by the 1,050 in blinds and antes. So, if I fold this most often, Vino is going to fold as well. And it's going to be a battle of who can, not get blinded out longer. So, since I have a very slight edge maybe against his range, just $1,000 in blind money, I don't think you'd be too wrong folding this, but I kind of like the reshove. And so, okay, we jackpot the board here, but really what we wanted when this happened is to have him with one card below a 6. And that's exactly what happened. So this was a really favorable situation we managed to get once he flipped. And now with a bigger stack again, tied with ladder shock, pretty much we both want Vino to get eliminated. Give me 3-2. I'm not going to call it junk. Okay, now we're all about equal, which is sort of a common situation. And I don't know if this guy's capable of a fold. I'm not going to press my luck with 10 queen. Let's talk quickly about ranges here. Obviously, ace jack is a shove, but we're effectively 7 blinds deep, 7 or 8 blinds deep. And what would I shove? I'd shove any suited ace, maybe ace 6 or 7 offsuit, king jack suited, king queen offsuit, any pocket pair. That's roughly my range here. Okay, and now let's talk about calling ranges. So obviously we have no interest in calling this bet, but with a monster we'd have to. Obviously aces we call. I would say here I would call with jacks plus and ace king. That'd be my range. And that's not necessarily, I haven't written down a mathematical solution to that, but I think that's, if not the actual solution, it's relatively close. Namely, with a monster you do call, but with just a decent hand that's ahead of his range, you certainly don't. Clear mistakes would be calling off there with, say, pocket sevens, ace 8, even though they're ahead of his range. They're definitely not far enough ahead. So this is relatively similar to 4 guys left in a normal sitting go, and you're not being super sure chipped. Okay, with a hand that's decently far ahead, you call. Otherwise, Yeah, here's probably a little tighter. And this, okay, with like 6 blinds, I'm going to shove. Shove any ace there without hesitation. And Loudest Shock is pissing me off with his min raises, but I'm not going to make my stand with a 6-8. Suited King 6 for like 5 blinds is a shove. And we get called against ace 7. Okay. Oh, we flop top pair. Bang. So that's pretty sweet. I mean, it's nice. Alright, let me just quickly summarize a couple of these points. Number one, you want to play very tight early, and the tightness you want to have depends on the payout structure. So the more guys get a decent payout, the tighter you want to be early. And with 5 guys in particular, you want to be very tight early. Whereas with like 3 guys, then the chips that you accumulate early are a little more valuable, and you want to take some more edges there, and go ahead and pursue hands like, say, ace queen in the hijack, raising that up during low blinds. So without belaboring the point, you never want to be the one who's risking chips later on. Okay, you want to be the shover. You really don't want to be the caller. This is when Sklansky's gap is maximally in effect, and that's definitely the biggest way to maximize your return on satellite and step investment, is to try as hard as possible to not be the one who's gambling late. Okay, so I'm really into these steps. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'm very happy to look at hands that you guys might have if you post them on the forums. And best of luck on your journey toward winning a WSOP buy-in.